There's something hauntingly beautiful about the echoes of a forgotten world where crumbling walls still bear the weight of kings long gone, and whispers of ancient rituals linger in the dust. Picture this: you're standing in the shadow of a once magnificent palace, its grandeur now reduced to fragments, yet its story still pulsing beneath the surface. These are the places where history doesn't just fade away. It waits, patient and enigmatic, for someone to listen. Today, we're stepping into the footprints of those who came before us, unraveling the mystical legacies of dynasties that time nearly erased. These weren't just rulers and empires. They were architects of the extraordinary, weaving tales of power, faith, and mystery into the very fabric of their civilizations. And though their names might not fill modern textbooks, their influence lingers hidden in artifacts, encoded in symbols, and buried beneath layers of myth and memory. What is it about these lost dynasties that pulls us in? Maybe it's the thrill of the unknown, the way their stories dangle just out of reach, teasing us with fragments of truth. Or perhaps it's the realization that these civilizations, despite their brilliance, vanished into the shadows, leaving behind puzzles we're still desperate to solve. Think of the rituals performed under moonlit skies, the treasures buried with kings who believed they'd need them in another life, the cryptic inscriptions that hint at knowledge we've yet to fully understand. These aren't just relics of the past. They're bridges to a world where the line between history and legend blurs. And that's where the magic lies, not just in uncovering facts, but in feeling the pulse of a time when the mystical was as real as the ground beneath our feet. So let's journey together into the heart of these mysteries. We'll trace the footsteps of dynasties that shaped cultures, defied norms, and left behind legacies so potent they refuse to be forgotten. Along the way, you'll discover how their innovations echo in our modern world, how their beliefs still resonate in traditions we practice today, and why their stories matter now more than ever. This isn't just a trip through time. It's an invitation to see history not as a static record, but as a living, breathing force, one that still has secrets to share. Are you ready to listen? Then let's begin. There's something undeniably magnetic about civilizations that once thrived, only to slip silently into the shadows of history. Perhaps it's the way their stories feel unfinished, like a book missing its final chapter, leaving us to piece together the plot from scattered clues. Take the Khmer Empire, for example. Their towering temples like Angkor Wat weren't just feats of engineering. They were celestial maps carved in stone, aligning with the stars in ways we're still deciphering. Or consider the Olmecs, whose colossal stone heads seem to gaze across centuries, their purpose and meaning shrouded in whispers. These weren't just societies. They were living tapestries of innovation, belief, and ambition woven so intricately that even their ruins hum with untold stories. What makes these lost dynasties so captivating isn't just their achievements, but the gaps in our knowledge. Like detectives sifting through evidence, we're drawn to the mysteries they left behind. Why did the Maya abandon their sprawling cities at the height of their power? How did the Nabateans carve an entire civilization into rose-red cliffs, only to vanish without a trace? Every unanswered question is a thread pulling us deeper into the past, urging us to look beyond what's written and imagine what might have been. And that's the heart of their allure. They force us to confront how much we don't know. In a world where information is at our fingertips, these ancient enigmas remind us that some secrets refuse to be easily uncovered. But it's not just about the puzzles they left behind. Forgotten dynasties challenge our assumptions about progress and permanence. We marvel at their advancements, like the Indus Valley's meticulous city planning or the Minoan's vibrant frescoes, only to realize how fragile even the greatest civilizations can be. Their rises were meteoric, their falls often abrupt, and yet their influence lingers. The Olmecs' reverence for jade echoes in later Mesoamerican cultures. The Khmer's hydraulic engineering still astounds modern scientists. These connections remind us that history isn't a straight line but a vast, interconnected web, where lost threads can still tug at the present. So why do we keep searching, digging, wondering? Because these vanished worlds hold up a mirror to our own. They show us the heights humanity can reach and the depths we can plummet. They whisper cautionary tales about hubris, resilience, and the fleeting nature of power. But most of all, they invite us to dream, to stand in the ruins of a forgotten palace and feel the weight of centuries pressing in, not as an ending, but as an invitation to keep listening. Because every shattered artifact, every faded inscription is a voice from the past asking, "Will you remember us?" A mystical legacy isn't just about what a civilization left behind. It's about what they couldn't explain, what they revered, and what they feared. These are the threads that weave through time, connecting us to minds that saw the world through a lens of wonder and mystery. Take the Mayans, whose celestial calendars didn't just track time but predicted cycles of creation and destruction, blurring the line between astronomy and prophecy. Or the Egyptians, who didn't merely bury their dead but equipped them with spells from the Book of the Dead, a guide to navigating the afterlife as if death were just another journey. These weren't just rituals, they were attempts to grasp forces beyond human understanding, to commune with the divine, or even to cheat fate itself. What sets these legacies apart is their refusal to fit neatly into logical boxes. They're not artifacts we can simply dust off and display. Their ideas that resist dissection. Consider the legend of Shangri-La, a paradise hidden in the Himalayas. Was it a real place, a metaphor for enlightenment, or something in between? The ambiguity is the point. These dynasties wrapped their deepest truths in layers of symbolism, knowing some knowledge couldn't be handed down plainly. It had to be uncovered, pondered, even dreamed about. That's why their temples align with solstices, their art teams with cryptic glyphs, and their myths repeat like echoes across continents. They built puzzles into their worldviews, inviting future generations to unravel them. But here's the twist: these mystical elements weren't fringe beliefs. They were the bedrock of entire societies. The Olmecs shaped their culture around jaguar deities, seeing the animal as a bridge between worlds. The Nabateans carved their city of Petra into cliffs not just for defense, but because they believed the rock itself was sacred. For these civilizations, the mystical wasn't separate from daily life. It was the fabric of reality. And that's what makes their legacies so enduring. We can study their irrigation systems or trade routes, but to truly understand them, we have to step into their mindset, where every storm could be a god's anger, every eclipse a cosmic omen. So why does this matter now? Because these legacies challenge us to see history not as a collection of facts, but as a conversation, one where ancient voices still have something to say. When we decode a Mayan glyph or trace the path of a vanished pilgrim, we're not just solving riddles, we're relearning how to ask the big questions about our place in the universe, the nature of time, the thin veil between the seen and unseen. The mystical isn't confined to the past. It's a reminder that some truths are too vast for textbooks. They demand to be felt, debated, carried forward. And that's how a dynasty forgotten by history becomes immortal. Archaeology doesn't just dig up the past, it confronts us with its mysteries. Picture a team brushing dust from a stone tablet, only to find symbols that match no known language. Or imagine a satellite revealing geometric patterns etched into a desert floor, so vast they can only be seen from the sky. These aren't just artifacts, they're riddles left by cultures that operated on a logic we're still piecing together. Take the Nazca Lines, those enormous drawings carved into Peru's plains. Were they messages to the gods, celestial maps, or something else entirely? Even with drones and 3D modeling, we're left guessing. And then there's the Antikythera Mechanism, a 2,000-year-old device with gears so precise it shouldn't exist in its time. It's as if the past is daring us to underestimate it. But how do archaeologists navigate this line between fact and folklore? It starts with tools sharper than any trowel. Ground-penetrating radar peers beneath soil without disturbing a single grain. LiDAR technology strips away jungle canopies to expose lost cities hidden for centuries. Carbon dating clocks organic materials with eerie accuracy. Yet for all our tech, some discoveries resist explanation. Symbols etched into temple walls might align with constellations, or they could be the doodles of a bored artisan. A skeleton buried with gold might be a king or a wealthy merchant who fancied royal trappings. The challenge isn't just finding evidence, it's interpreting it without projecting our own assumptions onto people who saw the world differently. Consider the Voynich Manuscript, a book filled with botanical illustrations and unreadable text that's defied codebreakers for centuries. Is it an elaborate hoax, a lost language, or a guide to medicinal plants we no longer recognize? The more we study it, the more questions arise. This is where archaeology becomes a dance between science and humility. Researchers must weigh every clue: the placement of objects in a tomb, the wear patterns on a tool, the pollen traces in ancient cookware. Sometimes the most mundane detail, a child's footprint preserved in clay, tells a richer story than any treasure. Yet some mysteries push beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding. The Great Pyramid's alignment with true north is too precise to dismiss as coincidence. The acoustic properties of certain ancient chambers suggest rituals where sound itself was sacred. These aren't gaps in our knowledge, they're doorways. Archaeology's greatest gift isn't solving puzzles, but revealing how much we still don't know. Every time we think we've mapped the limits of ancient innovation, we stumble upon something like the Baghdad battery, a clay jar that may have been an early electrical cell. Was it used for medicine, metallurgy, or a purpose we've yet to imagine? In the end, archaeology teaches us that history isn't a locked box but a conversation. Each discovery is a syllable in a language we're still learning to speak. The past doesn't surrender its secrets easily. It waits for us to ask the right questions, to approach with both curiosity and respect. Because sometimes the most profound truth isn't in the answer, but in the wonder the question leaves behind. There's a name that echoes through history like a siren's call: Atlantis. Plato first spun its tale 2,400 years ago, describing an island empire of unparalleled sophistication, swallowed by the sea in a single catastrophic day. But here's the twist: he framed it as a moral fable, a warning about hubris. So why, centuries later, are we still scouring ocean floors and ancient texts for traces of this lost world? Because Atlantis isn't just a story, it's a mirror reflecting our deepest fascinations with forgotten glory and hidden truths. The heart of the mystery lies in Plato's own words. He placed Atlantis beyond the pillars of Hercules' modern-day Gibraltar, painting it as a naval power that conquered parts of Europe and Africa before angering the gods. Its demise, a fiery cataclysm followed by tidal waves, leaving only impassable mud where an empire once stood. But was this elaborate world building for his philosophical dialogue, or a distorted retelling of a real event? Some scholars point to the Minoan civilization on Crete, obliterated by the volcanic eruption of Thera around 1600 BCE. The timing fits, and the Minoans' advanced palaces and seafaring prowess mirror Plato's account. Yet others argue Atlantis was purely allegorical, a literary device to explore themes of corruption and divine punishment. Then there's the Yonaguni Monument off Japan's coast, a sprawling underwater formation of terraces, steps, and what appear to be carved pillars. Discovered in the 1980s, it sparked fierce debate. Geologists see natural sandstone erosion, while proponents of lost civilizations spot deliberate design, perhaps remnants of a sunken city. If not Atlantis itself, could it be evidence of a broader pattern, dynasties erased by rising seas at the end of the last ice age? Ancient flood myths from Mesopotamia to the Americas suggest humanity remembers these upheavals, even if the details blur over millennia. Theories spiral from there. Some tie Atlantis to advanced technology, crystals channeling energy, flying machines hinted at in Sanskrit texts posing that its destruction was self-inflicted. Others propose locations from the Azores to Antarctica, each hypothesis a thread in a tapestry of speculation. But perhaps Atlantis's greatest legacy isn't its physical location, but what its enduring myth reveals about us. It's a blank canvas where we project our awe of ancient ingenuity and our fear of fragility. Every sonar scan of the ocean floor, every reinterpretation of crumbling texts, is a testament to our refusal to let the past stay buried. So was Atlantis real? The answer might lie somewhere between geology and legend. Whether a cautionary tale or a civilization lost to time, its story endures because it speaks to something universal: the thrill of discovery, the humility of remembering that even the mightiest empires can vanish beneath the waves. And that's a mystery worth diving for. The air inside Tutankhamun's tomb was thick with more than just dust. It carried the weight of a 3,000-year-old warning. When Howard Carter's team first breached the burial chamber in 1922, they uncovered not just golden treasures, but an inscription that would ignite centuries of speculation. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king. Within months, Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, was dead from an infected mosquito bite, and soon others linked to the discovery fell ill or met bizarre ends. Newspapers screamed of a pharaoh's vengeance, but what really lurks behind the curse of the tomb? Ancient Egyptians didn't just fear curses, they engineered them. Protective spells woven into tomb walls weren't mere decoration. They were metaphysical security systems designed to guard the sacred journey of the dead. The mummy's curse legend taps into a deeper truth. This was a culture that believed words held power. Hieroglyphs weren't just writing, they were vessels of energy capable of shaping reality. A curse inscribed near a burial chamber wasn't superstition. It was a legal contract with the divine, a deterrent etched in stone. Yet modern science offers a less mystical explanation. Sealed tombs can harbor ancient molds like Aspergillus flavus, which attacks the lungs, or pockets of toxic gases like hydrogen sulfide. Could Carnarvon's fate have been sealed not by magic, but by pathogens lying dormant in the stale air? But the curse's persistence reveals something fascinating about human psychology. When the Titanic sank, some claimed it was punishment for carrying a mummy's sarcophagus, never mind that no such artifact was on board. Our brains are wired to connect dots even when the dots aren't there. The curse thrives in the space between coincidence and pattern seeking, a reminder that fear often fills gaps science hasn't yet bridged. Perhaps the real magic of Tutankhamun's curse isn't in its authenticity, but in its endurance. 3 millennia after his death, the boy king still commands attention, his name whispered with equal parts reverence and dread. Whether through biology, belief, or sheer bad luck, the curse achieved what all the pharaohs desired: immortality. Not in gold or stone, but in the unshakable grip of a story too compelling to bury. Imagine holding a book where every page pulses with secrets, where the words look familiar yet make no sense, and the illustrations depict plants that don't seem to exist on Earth. This isn't fiction, it's the Voinish Manuscript, a 240-page enigma that's defied codebreakers, linguists, and even wartime cryptographers for over 6 centuries. Discovered in 1912 by a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich, its vellum pages are filled with looping, alien script alongside drawings of floating castles, naked women bathing in green liquid, and celestial diagrams that twist the known heavens into impossible configurations. The moment you see it, one question grips you. What were they trying to say? Theories about its origins spiral in every direction. Some argue it's a meticulously crafted Renaissance hoax, an elaborate scam to swindle a wealthy patron hungry for exotic knowledge. Others propose it's a lost herbal compendium, its bizarre plants perhaps encrypted to protect medicinal secrets. Then there's the wilder fringe, extraterrestrial communication, alchemical cipher, even a visual representation of quantum physics centuries ahead of its time. But here's what we do know. Carbon dating places its creation between 1404 and 1438, likely in northern Italy. The script flows too smoothly to be random gibberish, suggesting a real language or code. And its illustrations divide into distinct sections: botanical, astronomical, biological, and cosmological, as if it's a fragmented encyclopedia of a world we've never seen. Attempts to crack its code read like a who's who of intellectual history. World War II codebreakers fresh from deciphering Nazi ciphers took one look and hit a wall. Modern AI algorithms trained on hundreds of languages have parsed its patterns, only to spit out contradictory results. Even the NSA, America's top code-cracking agency, once threw its supercomputers at the manuscript and walked away baffled. The closest anyone's come. In 2019, a scholar claimed to identify Hebrew shorthand beneath the script, but the translation yielded only fragmented, dreamlike phrases: farmer, light, air. It's as if the manuscript taunts us, dangling meaning just out of reach. But perhaps the most haunting detail isn't the text, it's the illustrations. Those otherworldly plants with bulbous roots and spiraling stems, could they be extinct species, metaphors for spiritual concepts, or pure fantasy? The astronomical pages are even stranger. One diagram shows a series of concentric circles with radiating arms, resembling a galaxy, except medieval Europe had no knowledge of such structures. Another depicts zodiac symbols inside a wheel of nude figures, suggesting a fusion of astrology and human biology that predates modern holistic medicine by centuries. What does this say about lost dynasties? The Voynich Manuscript forces us to confront how much knowledge might have slipped through history's cracks. Libraries burned, oral traditions faded, entire ways of seeing the world, herbalism, star lore, sacred geometry could have thrived in corners of the medieval world we'll never fully reconstruct. Maybe the manuscript isn't a hoax or an alien artifact, but a relic of a parallel intellectual tradition, one that didn't survive the march of official science. Its very existence whispers a humbling truth. The past is far stranger and far richer than our textbooks dare admit. So why keep chasing answers? Because the Voynich isn't just a puzzle, it's a mirror. Every generation that studies it projects its own obsessions onto those cryptic pages, from Renaissance magic to modern cryptography, and that's the real magic of lost dynasties. They don't just leave behind artifacts, they leave behind questions that refuse to die. Long after empires crumble, their mysteries keep us awake at night, daring us to wonder, what else don't we know? Standing amid the towering stone walls of Great Zimbabwe, You can almost hear the echoes of a bustling marketplace, the clink of gold being weighed, the murmur of traders from distant lands, the rhythm of a city at the height of its power. This wasn't just a settlement. It was the heart of an empire that dominated southern Africa between the 11th and 15th centuries, its influence stretching from the Indian Ocean to the interior. Yet for centuries, European explorers refused to believe Africans could have built something so magnificent. They spun wild tales of Phoenicians, King Solomon's mines, even mythical kingdoms, anything to avoid admitting the truth. That these ruins were the work of a sophisticated civilization whose achievements rewrite the story of the medieval world. What makes Great Zimbabwe so extraordinary isn't just its scale, but its precision. The massive granite walls, built without mortar, curve seamlessly into one another, their stones fitted so tightly that not even a blade of grass could slip between them. The great enclosure, with its 30-foot-high towers and labyrinthine passages, wasn't just a fortress, it was a cosmic blueprint. Archaeologists found artifacts here that tell a story of global connections: Persian glass, Chinese porcelain, Arab coins. This was a hub of trade and diplomacy, where gold flowed like water and leaders governed with a sophistication that rivaled any European court of the time. But the real mystery isn't how Great Zimbabwe thrived, it's why it fell. By the 15th century, the city was abandoned, its people scattered. Some theories point to climate change, with shifting weather patterns drying up vital trade routes. Others suggest political upheaval or resource depletion. Yet the most compelling clue might lie in the ruins themselves. Unlike other ancient sites, there's no evidence of invasion or destruction. It's as if the people simply walked away, leaving their homes intact as though they planned to return. The silence of Great Zimbabwe speaks volumes. For too long, colonial narratives dismissed Africa's pre-colonial achievements, framing the continent as a passive backdrop to history. But these stones tell a different story, one of innovation, ambition, and interconnectedness. They force us to ask, how many other civilizations have been erased from the record, not by time, but by bias? Every carving, every artifact, every wall that still stands is a rebuttal to those who thought history belonged only to certain voices. And that's the greatest mystery of all, not just who built Great Zimbabwe, but why we're still catching up to the truth. Buried beneath the shifting sands of China's Taklamakan Desert lie secrets that defy everything we thought we knew about ancient borders. The Tarim mummies, astonishingly preserved corpses with striking Caucasian features, draped in vibrant woolen textiles and surrounded by intricate artifacts, shouldn't exist here. Found thousands of miles from Europe, their fair hair, tall stature, and round eyes clash with the region's history, yet carbon dating places them here as early as 1800 BC. These aren't misplaced travelers, they were a thriving community, living and dying in what's now Xinjiang, leaving behind a cultural riddle that rewrites the story of human movement. How did these people reach the heart of Asia? The answer lies in the DNA. Genetic studies reveal ties not to East Asia, but to ancient populations from the Black Sea region, Siberia, and even Scandinavia. Some carried genes linking them to the Yamnaya, a Bronze Age culture from the steppes of Ukraine and Russia. Others shared ancestry with the Afanasivo, nomadic herders who roamed the Altai Mountains. These connections suggest an epic, unrecorded migration, a slow drift eastward across unimaginable distances, following rivers or fleeing climate shifts until they reached the Tarim Basin's isolated oases. Here they built a society so distinct, their very existence forces us to redraw the map of prehistoric cultural exchange. But it's not just their origins that fascinate. The Tarim mummies whisper secrets about a forgotten chapter of the Silk Road centuries before it earned its name. Their graves hold felt hats resembling those of Scythian nomads, woven baskets echoing European designs, and cheese-making equipment that hints at dairy rituals spanning continents. This wasn't just a crossroads, it was a melting pot where East and West mingled long before historians thought possible. The mummy's clothing alone tells a story of adaptation, intricate tartan patterns reminiscent of Celtic weavers, yet dyed with pigments sourced from local plants. Every thread is a testament to resilience, a blend of distant traditions and newfound ingenuity. What happened to them? The desert, with its dry air and salty soil, preserved their bodies but erased much of their legacy. By the time the Han Dynasty rose to power, their descendants had likely merged with neighboring groups, their language and customs absorbed into the tapestry of Central Asia. Yet their genetic markers linger in modern populations, silent witnesses to a migration that once bridged worlds. The Tarim mummies challenge our neat divisions of history, proof that ancient peoples were more connected, more mobile, and more daring than we ever imagined. Their story isn't just about the past, it's a reminder that identity has always been fluid, shaped by journeys we're only beginning to trace. In a quiet corner of Baghdad's National Museum sits an object that shouldn't exist, a small clay jar, no taller than your hand, with a copper cylinder inside and an iron rod protruding from its asphalt stopper. Found alongside Parthian artifacts dating back 2,000 years, this unassuming vessel has sparked one of archaeology's most heated debates. Could it be proof that ancient civilizations harnessed electricity? Known as the Baghdad Battery, its design is eerily reminiscent of a modern galvanic cell. Fill it with an acidic liquid like vinegar or grape juice, and the chemical reaction between the copper and iron could theoretically produce a small electrical charge. But here's the million-dollar question: was this accidental chemistry or deliberate innovation? The implications are staggering. If the Baghdad Battery wasn't just a storage jar but a functioning power source, it rewrites our understanding of ancient technological ambition. Some researchers suggest these devices might have been used for electroplating coating objects in thin layers of gold or silver through electrical currents. Artifacts from Mesopotamia show gilded surfaces so fine, they've long puzzled historians. Could this explain how artisans achieved such precision without modern tools? Others propose a more mystical purpose: temple rituals where miniature shocks created the illusion of divine contact, making statues speak or worshippers feel a deity's presence. Imagine a priest gripping the iron rod as current traveled through their body. Ancient audiences would have seen it as magic, not science. Yet mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, and for understandable reasons. No wires, no diagrams, no written records explicitly describe electrical experiments. The jars could have held scrolls, with the iron and copper merely acting as protective casings. But that's the paradox of ancient anomalies. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Consider the Antikythera Mechanism, dismissed as a hoax until modern imaging revealed its gears were genuine. Or Roman concrete, whose self-healing properties we've only recently decoded. History is littered with impossible inventions later proven real. What makes the Baghdad Battery so compelling isn't just its potential function, but what it says about how knowledge evolves and evaporates. The Library of Alexandria burned. Mayan texts were destroyed by conquistadors. Countless innovations likely rose and faded without leaving a trace. Maybe this humble jar represents a lost thread of experimentation, a path not taken. Or perhaps it's a reminder that the past refuses to fit neatly into our categories. Either way, it challenges us to wonder how many other breakthroughs might be hiding in plain sight, waiting for us to ask the right questions. The legend of El Dorado doesn't begin with a city of gold. It begins with a man, picture this, a ritual so dazzling, it ignited centuries of obsession. On the shores of Lake Guatavita, high in the Andes, the Muisca people would anoint a new leader by coating his body in gold dust. As dawn broke, he'd board a raft laden with treasures, emeralds, golden figurines, jewelry, and row to the lake's center. There, he'd plunge into the water, washing away the gold as offerings to the gods, while crowds onshore threw more riches into the depths. To the Muisca, this wasn't just a coronation, it was a sacred pact with the earth. But when Spanish conquistadors heard whispers of this ceremony, they didn't see spirituality, they saw a roadmap to unimaginable wealth. And so, the myth of El Dorado was born, not as a place, but as a golden man. Yet over time, the story mutated. The Gilded One became a city, then an empire, its streets paved with gold. Expeditions tore through jungles and mountains, leaving trails of starvation and violence in their wake. Some explorers claimed to have glimpsed its towers through the mist. Others swore they'd met survivors who'd feasted in its halls, but every lead dissolved like mirages in the heat. The irony, the Muisca did possess gold not hoarded in vaults, but woven into their cosmology. Their artisans crafted intricate tunjos, small figurines depicting warriors and animals, not as currency but as offerings. To them, gold wasn't a symbol of greed, but of the sun's divine energy, a metal meant for the gods, not men. Could there be truth beneath the legend? Recent discoveries suggest the myth wasn't entirely fabricated. In Colombia's highlands, archaeologists unearthed a trove of Muisca artifacts, including a ceramic jar filled with miniature gold boats, a possible nod to the ritual raft. Even more compelling, satellite imaging revealed a grid-like pattern near Bogotá, matching descriptions of Zipa, a sprawling Muisca settlement. But here's the twist, these weren't palaces dripping in gold. They were thriving communities with terraced farms, salt mines, and trade networks. The real El Dorado wasn't a treasure chest, it was a civilization that understood gold's true value lay not in possession, but in purpose. So why does the legend endure? Because El Dorado is more than a cautionary tale about greed. It's a mirror reflecting how stories transform across cultures, how a sacred rite can warp into a siren song for conquest. The conquistadors searched for a city that never existed, blind to the richness of the world before them. Meanwhile, Lake Guatavita still holds its secrets. Over 400 years of dredging has yielded only a fraction of its offerings. Perhaps that's the final lesson. Some treasures aren't meant to be found, only remembered. And in that remembering, the Muisca's legacy outshines any golden myth. When the last Grand Master of the Knights Templar, Jacques de Molay, burned at the stake in 1314, legend says he cursed the king and pope who condemned him, a curse fulfilled within the year when both men died under mysterious circumstances. But the real mystery isn't their dramatic downfall, it's what they left behind. These warrior monks weren't just elite soldiers, they were history's most enigmatic librarians, rumored to have smuggled sacred relics and forbidden knowledge out of Jerusalem's ruins. Some say they found the Holy Grail beneath Temple Mount. Others whisper they guarded fragments of the Ark of the Covenant. But the Templars' true legacy might be even more startling. A shadow network of lost dynasties and suppressed truths that rewrote Europe's destiny. What set the Templars apart wasn't just their military prowess, it was their unprecedented access. Founded in 1118 to protect Christian pilgrims, they quickly amassed wealth and influence, answering only to the Pope. Their fortresses doubled as banks, their ships as treasure transports, but it's their 9-year excavation beneath Solomon's temple that fuels speculation. What did they uncover in those tunnels? Medieval chronicles describe them hauling out scrolls of ancient wisdom, possibly Gnostic texts or even records of the Merovingian bloodline, a dynasty some believe descended from Christ himself. When the Templars were abruptly arrested on Friday the 13th, 1307, their inventories listed no such artifacts. Had they already been smuggled to Scotland, hidden in Rosslyn Chapel's cryptic carvings? Or buried beneath Oak Island's infamous money pit, the Templars' sudden erasure only deepened the mystique. Under torture, some confessed to bizarre rituals, spitting on the cross, worshipping a head called Baphomet. Were these admissions coerced or echoes of a secret creed blending Christianity, Kabbalah, and older traditions? Their symbology hints at esoteric knowledge. The twin riders on a single horse representing duality, the red cross on white mirroring alchemical transformation. Even their architecture whispers secret temples built with precise astronomical alignments, their foundations laid in sacred geometry. Then there's the financial conspiracy. The Templars essentially invented modern banking with a system of letters of credit that let pilgrims travel without carrying gold. When King Philip Roman IV of France destroyed them, he didn't just seize their assets, he erased the most sophisticated financial network of the Middle Ages. Was their real crime not heresy, but threatening monarchs with an independent economic system? Perhaps the most tantalizing thread is their rumored connection to lost dynasties. Some theories link them to the Priory of Sion, a mythical order guarding proof of the Merovingians' divine right to rule. Others suggest they preserved Cathar treasures after the Albigensian Crusade, including the legendary Book of Love, a gospel-claiming God was pure light, not a vengeful deity. These fragments paint the Templars not as heretics but as custodians of suppressed spiritual lineages. So where does truth end and legend begin? The Templars' story resists simple answers. Every artifact they allegedly touched, from the Shroud of Turin to the mysterious Chartres labyrinth, carries layers of interpretation. Their legacy isn't in gold or relics, but in the enduring idea that history's most powerful truths are often the ones someone tried hardest to burn. And that's a secret worth protecting. The Indus Valley civilization thrived along the banks of ancient rivers over 4,000 years ago, building sprawling cities with grid-patterned streets, advanced drainage systems, and towering granaries, yet their voices remain silent. Not for lack of trying, but because their script, etched into seals, tablets, and pottery, refuses to yield its secrets. Over 400 distinct symbols make up this enigmatic writing system, some resembling human figures, others animals or abstract shapes. But without a Rosetta Stone to bridge the gap between these marks and a known language, their meaning drifts just out of reach. What makes this mystery so tantalizing isn't just the inability to read the words, it's the haunting realization that an entire civilization's stories, laws, and prayers might be locked away in plain sight. Archaeologists have pieced together clues from the artifacts themselves. Take the famous unicorn seals, small stone tablets carved with a mythical creature and accompanied by cryptic inscriptions. Were these early trade licenses, religious tokens, or personal signatures? The answer could rewrite our understanding of how bureaucracy began. Then there's the discovery of standardized weights and measures across Indus Valley sites, suggesting a highly organized economy. If we could decipher the script, we might finally understand how they managed such precision over vast distances without a centralized empire. Theories about the language's origins are as diverse as the symbols themselves. Some linguists argue it's a precursor to Dravidian languages still spoken in southern India today. Others see ties to ancient Elamite or even distant Sumerian. Computer algorithms have analyzed the script's patterns, confirming it behaves like a true writing system, not random doodles, but the underlying structure remains elusive. The longest inscription found so far contains just 26 characters, offering no clear grammar or context to decode. It's like trying to reconstruct a novel from a handful of scattered sentences. Equally puzzling is the civilization's sudden decline around 1900 BCE. Was it climate change with shifting monsoon patterns drying up their lifeblood rivers? Invasion from nomadic groups, or something more subtle, a slow unraveling of trade networks or social cohesion? The script might hold the answer, buried in a merchant's ledger or a king's final decree. Until then, we're left with fragments, a child's toy cart suggesting bustling streets, a necklace of carnelian beads hinting at far-flung trade, and those silent, stubborn symbols waiting for the day someone cracks their code. What's most humbling about the Indus script is what it reveals about the fragility of knowledge. Here was a society that mastered urban planning, metallurgy, and art, yet their words slipped through history's fingers. It's a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations can leave behind puzzles that outlast their pyramids. And perhaps that's the point, not just to solve the mystery, but to marvel at how much we still have left to discover. Standing among the Karnak Stones is like stepping into a giant's game of dominoes, row after row of towering megaliths stretching across the Breton landscape, some as tall as 20 feet, others worn down by millennia of wind and rain. Over 3,000 of these ancient stones stand in eerie, precise lines, some running straight for nearly a mile, others bending into mysterious curves or clustering in circles. Built over 6,000 years ago, long before Stonehenge or the pyramids, their sheer scale defies logic. Who hauled these massive rocks into place and why? The answer might be written in the stars, the soil, or something even more elusive, the beliefs of a people who left no written record behind. One of the most compelling theories ties the stones to the heavens. Certain alignments match the sunrise during solstices, while others point to the moon's extreme positions in its 18.6-year cycle. Were they a colossal Neolithic observatory, helping early farmers track seasons for planting and harvest? Some researchers think so, pointing to similar sites across Europe where stones mirror celestial patterns. But then there's the enigma of the broken menhirs, stones deliberately toppled and buried in pits. If this was just a calendar, why the ritual destruction? Then there's the spiritual angle. Local legends whisper that the stones are a petrified Roman army turned to rock by the wizard Merlin. While that's pure myth, the truth might be just as mystical. Excavations have uncovered charred bones and pottery shards near the bases of some stones, hinting at ceremonial fires or offerings. Could these rows have been processional paths for rituals, guiding worshippers toward sacred spaces? The nearby tumulus of St. Mitchell, a massive burial mound overlooking the site, suggests the dead played a central role in whatever unfolded here. But perhaps the most provocative theory comes from the stones themselves, their sound. When struck, many of the megaliths produce resonant tones, almost like ancient bells. Experiments show some align with natural fault lines, where seismic activity might have amplified these sounds. Did Neolithic people use them to create eerie acoustic experiences during ceremonies, believing the stones could channel voices from the underworld or the sky? The Karnak stones resist easy answers because they weren't built for a single purpose. They were a canvas for an entire worldview, one that wove astronomy, religion, and community into the very land. Unlike later monuments, they lack carvings or clear symbols, as if their creators trusted the stones to speak for themselves, and in a way, they still do. Every alignment, every fracture, every echo is a fragment of a language we're still learning to hear, a reminder that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only honored. For centuries, European kings and popes whispered the name Prester John like a prayer, a Christian monarch rumored to rule a paradise of piety and power somewhere beyond the known world. His kingdom, described in a forged letter that spread like wildfire across medieval Europe, was a place where gold flowed in rivers, unicorns roamed royal gardens, and a fountain granted eternal youth. But here's the twist, this wasn't just fairy tale. The legend of Prester John shaped empires, launched expeditions, and even altered the course of history, all because the world was desperate to believe in him. The myth first took root in the 12th century, when a mysterious letter addressed to the Byzantine emperor surfaced, claiming to be from a king greater than any under heaven. Scholars now suspect it was a hoax penned by a clever cleric, but medieval Europe took it as gospel. Prester John's realm was said to lie beyond Persia, where he commanded an army of giants and ruled over the descendants of the Magi. The timing was no accident. Crusader states were crumbling, and Christendom needed a hero, a powerful ally against Islamic forces. The letter promised just that, a righteous king ready to march west and join the fight. But why did the legend stick? Because it kept moving. When no kingdom materialized in Asia, maps simply shifted Prester John to Ethiopia, fitting neatly with tales of the Ark of the Covenant in Axum. Portuguese explorers later scoured Africa, convinced they'd find his glittering court. Even Columbus carried a letter of introduction for him on his voyages. The myth became a geopolitical compass, steering real-world exploration and diplomacy. Ethiopian emperors, savvy to the power of the story, embraced it, exchanging embassies with Europe under the guise of Prester John's heirs. Beneath the fantasy lay kernels of truth. The legend likely wove together fragments of real Christian kingdoms, the Nestorian Church of Central Asia, the Coptic rulers of Ethiopia, even whispers of the Mongol Empire's tolerance toward Christians. It was a mosaic of hope, stitched together from travelers' tales and wishful thinking. Prester John's greatest legacy wasn't a lost kingdom, but the hunger he revealed. His myth endured because the world needed magic, not the kind with unicorns, but the belief that somewhere, justice and wonder still ruled. And in a way, that's the most powerful dynasty of all, the one we build in our imaginations. Imagine stumbling upon a face staring back at you from the earth, not a skeleton, but skin, hair, even the wrinkles around their eyes perfectly intact after 2,000 years. This isn't a scene from a fantasy novel. It's the reality of Europe's bog bodies, hundreds of eerily preserved corpses pulled from peat bogs across Denmark, Ireland, and Germany. These aren't accidental deaths. Many were bound, beaten, or stabbed before being placed in the water, their bodies kept as if time itself had paused. What secrets do these silent witnesses hold about the Iron Age world they left behind? Forensic science has peeled back the layers of these cold cases, revealing stories written in flesh and bone. Take Tollund Man, discovered in Denmark with a noose still around his neck, his expression so serene, early excavators thought he'd died recently. Or Lindo Man, whose last meal of charred bread suggests a ritual feast before his violent end. But it's the details that chill the most: carefully manicured nails, hair styled with resin, even traces of medicinal herbs in their stomachs. These weren't outcasts, they were people of status, chosen for something far darker than simple murder. The bogs themselves hold clues. To ancient Europeans, these wetlands were liminal spaces, neither land nor water, where the ordinary rules didn't apply. Offering a life to the bog wasn't just killing, it was sending a messenger to the gods. Some bodies show signs of overkill, multiple wounds, broken bones, as if ensuring the victim couldn't return. Others were pinned down with wooden stakes, a practice echoing myths of revenants who might rise without proper restraint. This wasn't random violence, it was theater, a gruesome performance meant to appease forces beyond human understanding. But who were these victims? DNA analysis paints a complex picture. Some were locals, others came from distant regions, possibly captives from rival tribes. Man's slit throat suggests a sacrificial act, while Windabi girl's shaved head hints at punishment for taboo breaking. The truth may lie in climate records. Many bog bodies date to periods of famine or upheaval, when desperate communities might have turned to extreme rites to restore balance. The bog bodies force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. These weren't barbaric acts, but calculated choices by sophisticated societies. The same cultures that crafted intricate talks and built hill forts also believed the gods demanded blood. Their preservation is a haunting gift, a chance to see the past not as dry history, but as a world where the mystical and mortal were inseparable. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part, recognizing how thin the line between reverence and violence can be when survival hangs in the balance. Deep in the highlands of Laos, an ancient mystery sprawls across the landscape. Thousands of massive stone jars, some taller than a person, others wide enough to hold a grown man, scattered like forgotten chess pieces across the Sunken Plateau. Known as the Plain of Jars, this enigmatic site dates back at least 2,000 years, its origins lost to time. Who carved these colossal vessels, some weighing several tons, and why? The answers might lie in the whispers of a civilization that once thrived here, its name erased by centuries but its legacy etched in stone. The jars themselves are a feat of engineering. Carved from sandstone and granite, their surfaces bear the marks of iron tools, suggesting they were crafted by a society with advanced metallurgical skills. Some stand alone, others cluster in groups of hundreds, arranged in patterns that hint at deliberate placement. But it's their sheer scale that baffles. How were they transported across rugged terrain without wheels or beasts of burden? Local legends speak of giants who once roamed the land, using the jars to brew rice wine for celestial celebrations. While that's pure folklore, the truth might be just as fascinating. Archaeologists have pieced together fragments of the jar's purpose. Excavations reveal human remains, pottery shards, and glass beads buried beneath and around them, pointing to funerary rites. Some theories suggest they were used for secondary burial, where bodies were left to decompose in the jars before bones were collected for final interment. Others propose they stored monsoon rainwater for travelers along ancient trade routes, turning the plateau into a pit stop for merchants moving between Southeast Asia and China. The truth may be a blend of both, a sacred landscape where rituals and practicality intertwined. The Plain of Jars also holds darker secrets. Unexploded bombs from the Vietnam War litter the area, a grim reminder of modern conflict layered atop ancient mystery. Yet despite the danger, researchers press on, uncovering artifacts that connect the jars to the broader tapestry of Southeast Asia's lost cultures. Similar megalithic traditions appear in India's Nilgiri Hills and Indonesia's Bada Valley, suggesting a shared cultural thread across the region. Were these jars part of a network of belief, a way for distant communities to speak the same spiritual language? What makes the site so compelling is its refusal to fit neatly into history's boxes. Unlike Angkor Wat or Borobudur, there are no grand temples or inscriptions to decode, just silent sentinels of stone, guarding stories we can only guess at. Perhaps that's the real magic of the Plain of Jars. It doesn't just challenge what we know, it reminds us how much we've yet to discover about the civilizations that came before us and the quiet legacies they left behind. In the heart of India's Lepakshi temple, a single stone pillar dangles from the ceiling, its base hovering just inches above the ground, defying gravity, physics, and everything we think we know about ancient architecture. This isn't an optical illusion or a trick of the light. Run a thin cloth beneath it, and the fabric glides effortlessly from one side to the other, proving there's no hidden support holding it up. Built during the Vijayanagara Empire in the 16th century, This marvel has baffled engineers for generations. How could craftsmen working 500 years ago achieve what modern science still struggles to explain? The answer lies in a forgotten fusion of precise geometry, spiritual symbolism, and a mastery of stone that borders on the supernatural. The pillar isn't just an anomaly, it's a testament to the Vijayanagara builder's genius. Unlike European cathedrals of the same era, which relied on flying buttresses to distribute weight, this temple's architects designed each component to interlock like a three-dimensional puzzle. The hanging effect likely stems from a perfectly calculated counterbalance. The pillar's upper sections are subtly thicker, redistributing its mass upward while the base remains delicately suspended. But here's the twist: locals whisper it wasn't just engineering prowess at work. Legend says the pillar was left slightly ajar as a challenge to future generations, a dare to replicate what the gods themselves had inspired. Touch it lightly and the entire pillar vibrates with a low hum, as if resonating with some hidden energy. What makes this even more extraordinary is the temple's broader context. Lepakshi's walls are adorned with frescoes that seem to ripple in candlelight, and monolithic sculptures carved from single boulders like the colossal Nandi bull, its polished surface reflecting the sky. These weren't just artists, they were mathematicians in stone, embedding celestial alignments and acoustic secrets into every curve. Some researchers believe the hanging pillar aligns with magnetic ley lines, acting as a spiritual antenna. Others argue it's a structural failsafe, designed to sway during earthquakes, protecting the temple from collapse. Either way, the builders left no blueprints, only whispers in the form of oral traditions passed down through stonemason guilds. The pillar's mystery deepens when you consider its spiritual role. In Hindu cosmology, the space between earth and sky is a threshold, the realm where gods and mortals meet. By literally suspending stone in that liminal space, the Vijayanagara craftsmen may have been encoding a metaphysical truth, that faith, like their pillar, exists beyond the laws of the material world. Modern engineers who have tried to replicate the feat admit it's nearly impossible without computer modeling. Yet here it stands, a silent rebuke to the arrogance of assuming ancient knowledge was primitive. Perhaps the greatest lesson of Lepakshi isn't in how the pillar hangs, but why we're still captivated by it. In an age of skyscrapers and AI, this single stone reminds us that some secrets aren't meant to be fully unraveled. They're invitations to wonder, to respect the brilliance of those who came before us, and to acknowledge that the past still holds truths we've yet to comprehend. The pillar doesn't just defy gravity, it defies time itself, daring us to look closer. Hidden in the archives of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace lies a parchment that shouldn't exist, a map drawn in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis, showing coastlines no European or Middle Eastern explorer had officially reached. The most shocking detail, the lower edge sketches a landmass chillingly similar to Antarctica, complete with mountain ranges and rivers centuries before Captain Cook's first sighting in 1820. But here's the twist: the map depicts Antarctica without its modern ice cap, a configuration last seen over 6,000 years ago. How could a 16th century navigator chart a continent buried under miles of ice, using knowledge that predates recorded civilization? The map's inscriptions offer tantalizing clues. Piri Reis himself wrote that he compiled it from 20 older sources, including charts dating back to Alexander the Great's era and the lands of the West known to no one. Some researchers believe these lost references might trace back to Phoenician or Minoan sailors' maritime dynasties whose voyages stretched far beyond Mediterranean waters. The Phoenicians, for instance, circumnavigated Africa 2,000 years before Vasco da Gama, while Minoan artifacts have turned up as far as the Azores. Could their descendants have passed down fragments of ancient Antarctic knowledge through generations of Mediterranean and Arab geographers? Others propose an even more radical theory, that the map preserves traces of a pre-Ice Age civilization advanced enough to chart the globe. Satellite surveys have revealed river valleys and fjords beneath Antarctica's ice, matching parts of Rise's outlines. If these features were last visible around 4000 BC, who was there to record them? The idea dovetails with Plato's account of Atlantis and similar flood myths describing cataclysms that reshaped coastlines. Perhaps the Piri Reis Map isn't just a cartographic anomaly, it's a palimpsest overwritten with echoes of a drowned world's geography. But skeptics counter that the Antarctica on the map might actually be South America's distorted coastline, a common error in early cartography. Yet Rise's depiction includes the Pommer Peninsula's unique hook shape, a detail impossible to guess without precise measurements. Even more perplexing, the map's grid uses spherical trigonometry, a technique formally developed centuries later to plot latitudes with near-modern accuracy. The truth may lie in a forgotten exchange of knowledge. Medieval Arab scholars preserved Greek astronomy while adding their own breakthroughs, and Ottoman libraries hoarded manuscripts from Silk Road travelers. Could a Chinese fleet's pre-Columbian voyage like Admiral Zheng, his alleged global expeditions have contributed Antarctic sightings to this pool of wisdom? Or did Polynesian wayfinders who crossed the Pacific using star paths and wave patterns share charts with traders in Indian Ocean ports? What makes the Piri Reis Map so haunting isn't just its accuracy, it's the reminder of how much history gets erased. For every Magellan or Columbus, there were likely dozens of unnamed explorers whose achievements faded into myth. The map whispers of an interconnected ancient world, where knowledge flowed along routes we're only beginning to trace. And that's the real mystery, not whether one civilization knew Antarctica, but how many fragments of our past still lie waiting beneath the ice of both the land and time itself. In the scorching summer of 1518, the streets of Strasbourg became the stage for one of history's most chilling spectacles, a plague not of boils or fever, but of dancing. It began with a single woman, Frau Trophia, stepping into the square with jerking, erratic movements, her body twisting as if pulled by invisible strings. Within days, dozens joined her, their limbs thrashing uncontrollably under the relentless July sun. By month's end, over 400 people were caught in the grip of this manic dance, their feet bleeding, their screams drowned out by the ceaseless rhythm of their own agony. Authorities, desperate to stop the frenzy, built wooden stages and hired musicians, believing the dancers needed to wear out the curse. Instead, the music only fueled their delirium. What force could drive an entire city to dance itself to the brink of collapse? The answer lies at the crossroads of medicine, superstition, and a society pushed to its breaking point. Medieval chroniclers blamed divine wrath or demonic possession, pointing to the dancers' glazed eyes and foaming mouths as signs of supernatural interference. Some whispered of cursed bread or tainted rye, a theory that holds weight when you consider ergot fungus, a mold that grows on damp grain and produces toxins similar to LSD. In small doses, it causes hallucinations and muscle spasms. In large quantities, convulsions and death. But here's the catch. Ergot poisoning doesn't explain why the dancers' movements were synchronized or why so many were drawn into the collective hysteria. This wasn't just biology, it was a mirror reflecting Strasbourg's deep fractures. The city had been ravaged by famine, its people starved and traumatized by years of crop failures and feudal oppression. Religious tensions simmered, with the Protestant Reformation looming on the horizon. In such a pressure cooker of despair, the dancing plague may have been a physical manifestation of communal panic, a phenomenon modern psychologists call mass psychogenic illness. Think of it as a contagion of the mind, where stress and suggestion fuse into tangible symptoms. There are eerie parallels to the Tanganyika laughter epidemic of 1962, where a schoolgirl's giggle triggered a chain reaction of uncontrollable laughter across entire villages. The body, it seems, can turn unspoken terror into motion when words fail. Yet the most haunting theory connects the plague to something older, an echo of forgotten rituals. Medieval Europe had a long tradition of ecstatic dancing cults, like the followers of Saint Vitus, who believed frenzied movement could purge sin or invoke divine favor. In times of crisis, these suppressed traditions might have resurfaced unconsciously, twisting communal trauma into a grotesque parody of sacred dance. The musicians hired by officials weren't just bystanders, they were unwitting conductors of a ritual no one remembered how to stop. The dancing plague didn't end with a cure, but with exhaustion. By September, the last dancers collapsed or died, their bodies broken by weeks of relentless motion. Today, we're left with a question that defies easy answers. Was it poison, psychosis, or something far older whispering through the crowd? Perhaps the truth lies in the space between all three, a reminder that history's strangest mysteries often emerge when the line between body, mind, and belief dissolves. And in that dissolution, we catch a glimpse of how fragile our grip on reality can be. The villagers of Woolpit must have thought the world itself had cracked open that day. There, in the wolf pits that gave the town its name, stood two children unlike any they'd ever seen, their skin a vivid, unnatural green, their clothes woven from some unidentifiable fabric, and their speech a guttural babble no one could decipher. According to 12th century chroniclers like Ralph of Coggeshall and William of Newburgh, the boy and girl were terrified, weeping as they clutched each other under the shocked gazes of Suffolk's farmers. But what makes this story more than just medieval gossip is the eerie consistency of the accounts. These weren't drunken tavern tales, they were recorded by sober monks who swore to their truth. So who or what were these green children? One theory stretches into the stars. The children claim to come from a place called St. Martin's Land, where the sun never rose and the light was perpetual twilight. Some modern UFO enthusiasts hear this and think of subterranean civilizations or even extraterrestrial visitors, a medieval close encounter, the green skin. Radiation sickness or the hue of an alien atmosphere, the unknown language, an interstellar dialect. It's a tantalizing idea, but 12th century Europe had no concept of space travel. If the children were describing something beyond their time, how would they even find the words? Then there's the folklore angle. Celtic and Germanic myths are thick with stories of the otherworld, a parallel dimension where time moves differently and beings sometimes slip into our realm. The green hue mirrors descriptions of fairies and forest spirits, creatures often depicted with emerald skin or clothing. Even the name Woolpit, from the Old English wolf pit, meaning wolf pit, carries eerie resonance. Pits and caves were traditional gateways to the underworld in European myth. But here's the twist: the children weren't ethereal or magical. They ate earthly food, though reportedly struggled with beans at first, aged like humans, and the boy eventually sickened and died. This wasn't a fleeting apparition, it was flesh and blood. The most grounded explanation points to a tragic historical footnote. The 12th century was a time of brutal famine and displacement. Some scholars suggest the children might have been Flemish refugees, fleeing persecution under King Henry Roman II. Their green skin could have been a symptom of chlorosis, a form of anemia caused by malnutrition that gives skin a yellowish-green pallor. As for the strange language, Flemish would have been utterly foreign to rural Suffolk ears. The twilight land they described might have been the dense, sunless forests of Flanders, or even the underground mines where some Flemish orphans were forced to labor. It's a theory that turns the fantastical into something painfully human, a story of lost children caught in the gears of history. Yet the mystery endures because it taps into something deeper than facts. The green children aren't just a historical oddity, they're a Rorschach test for how we see the past. To some, they're proof of realms beyond our understanding. To others, a reminder of how easily the marginalized can be mythologized. But perhaps the most haunting detail is the girl's fate. After learning English, she worked as a servant in a local household, eventually marrying a man from King's Lynn. She faded into ordinary life, her origins never fully explained. In the end, that's the real magic of Woolpit's green children, not whether they came from another world, but how they remind us that history's strangest stories are often the ones we'll never solve. The year was 1590, and the tension on Roanoke Island was thick enough to carve with a knife. Governor John White had just returned from England, his ships packed with supplies for the struggling colony he'd left behind 3 years earlier. But when he stepped ashore, the settlement was eerily silent. No smoke from chimneys, no voices calling greetings, just empty houses and overgrown fields. The only clue, the word Croatoan carved into a wooden post and the letters CRO etched into a nearby tree. No crosses, no distress signals, just those cryptic markings, as if the entire population of 115 men, women, and children had simply melted into the wilderness. What makes Roanoke's disappearance so chilling isn't just the mystery, it's the context. This wasn't some ill-prepared group of adventurers. It was England's first serious attempt at a permanent New World settlement, backed by Queen Elizabeth's court and led by seasoned explorers. The colonists had houses, a palisade, even a birth recorded Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America. Yet when White returned, even the fort's heavy cannons were gone, dragged away without a trace. The word Croatoan might seem like a straightforward clue. It referred to a nearby island and the native tribe who lived there, but the truth is far more layered. One theory suggests the colonists split into factions, some integrating with the Croatoans while others attempted a doomed march north toward Chesapeake Bay. Decades later, Jamestown settlers heard rumors of gray-eyed Indians in the interior people who spoke English and claimed descent from white ancestors. In the 20th century, a stone allegedly carved by Elena Dare, Virginia's mother, was found in North Carolina, detailing a harrowing journey inland. Most historians dismiss it as a hoax, but the persistence of such stories hints at a deeper truth. Assimilation may have been their survival strategy. Then there's the darker possibility of Spanish intervention. Spain viewed English colonies as existential threats, and their Florida outposts were just a few hundred miles south. In 1586, a Spanish ship actually located Roanoke but reported it deserted. Had they arrived mid-crisis, or had they already eliminated the colony? No mass graves were ever found, but secrecy would have served Spain's interests. But Roanoke's grip on our imagination goes beyond historical forensics. It's become a mirror for our fears of isolation, of the unknown, of civilizations swallowed by the land itself. The Croatoan carving birthed 1,000 legends, from ghostly, lost colony apparitions to supernatural tales of alien abductions or time warps. Even the location is poetic, modern-day Dare County, named for the vanished baby who symbolizes both hope and haunting. Perhaps the real lesson of Roanoke lies in what it reveals about colonial mythology. The vanishing narrative conveniently obscured the reality of native alliances and conflicts. framing the land as a place where Europeans disappeared rather than one where they transformed, or were transformed by the people already there. The Croatoans themselves, far from being passive bystanders, were key players in the region's power struggles. Maybe the colony didn't vanish at all. Maybe it simply became something else, its story rewritten by those who needed a tidy mystery instead of a messy truth. And that's the heart of the enigma. Roanoke endures not because it's unsolvable, but because every generation finds new meaning in its silence. Whether through DNA studies linking modern tribes to the settlers or archaeological digs that turn up Elizabethan artifacts in unexpected places, the search continues. The colony's ghosts aren't just in the wind, they're in the way we keep looking for them centuries later, as if solving their fate might finally tell us who we are. Imagine setting sail across thousands of miles of open ocean with no compass, no maps, and no GPS, just the stars, the waves, and the songs passed down through generations. This wasn't just a feat of bravery for the Polynesians, it was routine. Their voyages across the Pacific, spanning from Hawaii to New Zealand to Rapa Nui, represent one of humanity's most extraordinary achievements in exploration. These weren't accidental drifts, they were deliberate journeys guided by an intricate system of celestial navigation, wave patterns, and bird behavior, a mastery of the natural world so precise it puts modern technology to shame. At the heart of their success was the art of wayfinding, a skill woven into every aspect of Polynesian culture. Navigators memorized the positions of over 200 stars, tracking their rising and setting points to maintain course. But it wasn't just the heavens that guided them. They read the ocean like a living map. The way swells bent around islands, the color shifts in the water revealing unseen reefs, even the flight paths of birds signaling land over the horizon. The Polynesians didn't just conquer the Pacific, they conversed with it, turning environmental cues into a language of movement. The real mystery lies in the scale of their journeys. How did they reach remote islands like Rapa Nui, a speck of land in an endless blue expanse without written records or instruments? Oral traditions hold clues. Stories of legendary navigators like Maui, who fished up islands from the deep, or the great canoe Hokula, whose modern recreation proved these voyages weren't myth, they were repeatable science. When the Hokula sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti in 1976 using only traditional methods, it wasn't just a tribute, it was validation of a system Europeans once dismissed as impossible. Yet gaps remain. Did Polynesians reach the Americas before Columbus? Sweet potatoes, native to South America, appeared in Polynesia by the 14th century, while chicken bones from Polynesian voyages have been found in Chile. These aren't just artifacts, they're breadcrumbs of a transoceanic exchange history barely acknowledges. What's most humbling is how much we've forgotten. Western explorers arrived in the Pacific to find islands already settled, their people tracing ancestry back centuries. The Polynesians didn't just survive the ocean, they thrived in it, building dynasties of knowledge that turned the sea from a barrier into a highway. Their legacy isn't just in the places they found, but in the questions they force us to ask. How many other chapters of human ingenuity have we overlooked? And what might we still learn from those who navigated the world by memory, myth, and the whisper of the waves? Buried beneath a mound of earth in central China lies one of history's most tantalizing sealed vaults, the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unify China. While the world marvels at his terracotta army standing in silent formation nearby, the emperor's actual resting place remains untouched, a time capsule from 2,200 years ago that modern archaeologists dare not fully open. The reasons are as complex as the man himself. a ruler who conquered death as fiercely as he conquered warring states, surrounding himself with mercury rivers and booby traps to protect his journey into eternity. This wasn't just a tomb, it was an underworld metropolis designed to mirror the emperor's earthly dominion. Ancient texts describe palaces with pearl-lined ceilings, crossbows rigged to fire at intruders, and a miniature kingdom where rivers of liquid mercury simulated the great waters of China. Recent scientific surveys confirm staggering mercury levels in the soil, matching historical accounts. But here's the chilling detail: the mercury wasn't just decorative. Qin Shi Huang drank mercury-laced elixirs, believing them the key to immortality. In the end, it likely hastened his death at just 49, a cruel irony that underscores the emperor's desperate dance with the divine. Why the hesitation to excavate? The risks are as layered as the tomb itself. Mercury vapor alone makes the site hazardous, but there's also the fragility of what lies within. The terracotta warriors were once brightly painted, yet exposure to air caused their pigments to flake off within minutes. Imagine losing 2,000-year-old silks, lacquerware, or even the emperor's corpse preserved like the Mawangdui mummies to rushed science. Then there's the matter of those legendary traps. While historians debate whether automated crossbows could still function after millennia, no one wants to test the theory. The tomb also represents a philosophical crossroads. For China, it's a cultural nucleus, a symbol of national identity that demands reverence, not just exploration. Some argue that leaving it sealed honors the emperor's final wish, to rule undisturbed in his afterlife kingdom. Others see it as a technological challenge. We simply lack tools delicate enough to probe its secrets without destruction. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed a vast underground structure with chambers arranged like a celestial map. But what scrolls might lie in those rooms? Could they hold lost philosophies, blueprints for forgotten machines, or even the emperor's own voice etched on bamboo slips? Qin Shi Huang's legacy is already staggering standardized writing, the Great Wall's first bricks, a bureaucracy that shaped empires. But his tomb might hold the key to understanding how a man who burned books to control history became history's greatest riddle. Every year, new non-invasive techniques emerge: muon detectors that X-ray the Earth, AI that reconstructs degraded artifacts from scans. Perhaps one day we'll peer inside without lifting a shovel, finally meeting the emperor on his own terms. Until then, his silent citadel waits, a reminder that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, only respected. Deep in the cliffs of Mali's Bandiagara escarpment, the Dogon people have guarded a secret for centuries, a knowledge so precise, it defies conventional explanation. Their oral traditions speak of Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, with astonishing accuracy. But not just Sirius A, the star we all see. They describe a dense, invisible companion star, Sirius B, calling it Potolo, a tiny, weighty orb that orbits Sirius every 50 years. Here's the catch: Sirius B wasn't discovered by Western astronomers until 1862, using powerful telescopes. It's a white dwarf, invisible without advanced optics, yet the Dogon not only knew of its existence, but also described its elliptical orbit and heavy composition long before modern science confirmed it. How could a remote African tribe possess such detailed astronomical insight? One theory stretches back to the stars themselves literally. In the 1970s, anthropologist Marcel Grioul documented Dogon elders recounting cosmic lore passed down through generations, stories of amphibious beings called Nommo who descended from Sirius, bringing wisdom to Earth. These entities, they claimed, revealed the secrets of Potolo. To some, this echoes the ancient astronaut hypothesis, the idea that extraterrestrial visitors jump-started human knowledge. But there's a flaw in that logic. The Dogon's serious lore, while startling, might have roots in terrestrial cross-pollination. During the colonial era, European astronomers frequently traveled through Africa, and it's possible their discussions about Sirius B filtered into local folklore, morphing over time into the Namo legend. Yet the counterargument is equally compelling. The Dogon's knowledge includes specifics that even 19th century science hadn't nailed down. They knew Sirius B was made of a heavier metal than iron, a striking detail, since white dwarfs are indeed denser than any terrestrial material. Their 50-year orbital calculation is also eerily close to the modern measurement of 50.1 years. Coincidence? Maybe, but consider this. Other cultures, like the ancient Egyptians, revered Sirius as well, aligning temples to its heliacal rising. Could there have been a shared, forgotten tradition of advanced astronomy, later preserved only in isolated pockets like the Dogon? The truth might lie in the Dogon's own intellectual heritage. Long before Griaul's arrival, they were keen observers of the night sky, tracking celestial cycles for agricultural and ritual purposes. Their understanding of Sirius B could stem from generations of meticulous observation, blending with symbolic mythology. The Namo might not be aliens but metaphorical representations of celestial phenomena, a common thread in indigenous cosmologies worldwide. After all, the Aboriginal Australians mapped the variable star Betelgeuse's brightness changes, while the Maya calculated Venus's cycles with razor precision. Ancient peoples often encoded scientific knowledge in myth to preserve it. What makes the Dogon story resonate isn't just the how, but the why. In a world where indigenous knowledge is often dismissed as primitive, their serious tradition challenges the narrative. It forces us to ask, how many other cultures held sophisticated understandings of the cosmos, only to be overshadowed by the dominant voices of history? Whether the Dogon's wisdom came from star visitors, colonial encounters, or their own brilliance, it stands as a testament to humanity's enduring hunger to map the heavens and our place among them. The real mystery isn't just their knowledge of Sirius B, but the countless other celestial secrets still woven into the oral histories we've yet to fully hear. Imagine a book so massive it takes two people to lift it, a leather-bound tome weighing as much as a grown man, its pages filled with cramped, feverish script stretching from edge to edge. This is the Codex Gigas, the giant book, a medieval manuscript so unsettling it earned a darker nickname, the Devil's Bible, its most infamous feature. A full-page, haunting illustration of Satan himself, arms raised, claws extended, his body twisted in a grotesque dance of damnation. But this isn't just a spooky artifact gathering dust in a library. It's a time capsule from 13th century Bohemia, a place where faith, fear, and folklore collided in ways that still send shivers down modern spines. The legend surrounding its creation is straight out of a Gothic nightmare. A monk condemned to death for breaking his vows strikes a deal with the devil, his life in exchange for writing the entire book in a single night. As the story goes, the monk's quill flew across the parchment, fueled by infernal power, until dawn broke, leaving behind a work so immense, so meticulously detailed, that no mortal could have completed it alone. Of course, historians dismiss this as myth. The Codex Gigas likely took decades to create, its pages painstakingly crafted by multiple scribes. But the legend persists because it speaks to something deeper: the unnerving perfection of the text, the eerie consistency of the handwriting, as if the entire volume flowed from a single, unbroken trance. Flip through its 620 giant vellum pages, and you'll find more than just demonic artwork. The Codex is a bizarre encyclopedia of medieval knowledge, blending sacred and profane. The complete Latin Bible sits alongside esoteric texts like Josephus's Jewish Wars, medical treatises, and even a calendar for predicting feast days. But the most chilling inclusion, a sprawling exorcism manual, its incantations and rituals detailed with clinical precision. Was this a practical guide for clergy or something darker? The juxtaposition is jarring hymns to salvation sharing space with diagrams of the underworld, as if the scribes couldn't decide whether to worship God or document his greatest adversary. Context is key to unraveling the Codex's contradictions. The 13th century was a time of upheaval, crusades, plagues, and heresy trials gripping Europe. Monasteries weren't just spiritual centers, they were fortresses of knowledge where scribes copied texts to preserve them from an uncertain world. In this light, the Codex Gigas might have been a desperate act of devotion, a monk's attempt to capture every facet of existence, light and dark, in one unshakable monument. That infamous devil portrait, it's not alone. Directly opposite, gleaming in gold leaf, is an image of the heavenly city, a stark reminder that medieval minds saw the divine and the demonic as two sides of the same coin. Why does the Devil's Bible still captivate us? Because it's a mirror reflecting our own obsessions with forbidden knowledge and the limits of human endurance. Modern imaging technology has revealed hidden fingerprints in the margins, traces of the scribes who toiled over it, their sweat and ink forever fused to the parchment. Some pages show signs of haste, smudged letters and corrections, proving that even this supernatural manuscript bears the marks of very human hands. Yet the mystery lingers. Who were these scribes? What drove them to compile such an exhaustive, contradictory work? And why, of all possible images, did they grant the devil equal billing alongside saints and scripture? The Codex Gigas survives today under heavy guard in Sweden's National Library, a relic of an era when books were more than information, they were talismans, objects of power. Its legend endures not because of any pact with the devil, but because it represents the eternal human struggle to make sense of a world where darkness and light are forever entwined. In the end, the real magic of the Devil's Bible isn't in its myths, but in its stubborn refusal to be easily explained, a 1,000-year-old puzzle that still dares us to turn the page. The cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde cling to the rock faces like ancient wasp nests, their empty doorways staring out across the desert as if waiting for inhabitants who never returned. These are the ghost towns of the ancestral Pueblones, better known as the Anasazi, a Navajo term meaning ancient enemies or ancient ones, who thrived in the American Southwest for centuries before vanishing around 1300 AD. Their departure wasn't just a relocation, it was a cultural vanishing act, leaving behind towers of stacked stone, intricate pottery, and petroglyphs etched into canyon walls, messages without a key. What could drive an entire civilization to abandon their homes so completely, leaving even their cooking pots behind? Climate records tell part of the story. Tree rings from the period reveal a devastating megadrought stretching nearly 50 years, a dry spell so severe it would have turned fertile valleys into dust bowls. The Anasazi's sophisticated irrigation systems, designed to channel seasonal rains, would have been useless against such unrelenting aridity. But drought alone doesn't explain the violence etched into the archaeological record. At some sites, like Colorado's Cowboy Wash, human bones show signs of butchering and burning, gruesome evidence of possible cannibalism during famine. Were these acts of desperation or something darker, like ritual violence or warfare? Then there's the migration theory. Unlike romanticized, lost civilization tropes, the Anasazi likely didn't disappear, they transformed. Hopi and Zuni oral traditions trace their ancestry to these cliff-dwelling people, suggesting a gradual dispersal south and east, where water and game were more reliable. Pottery styles and architectural motifs reappear in later Pueblo cultures, hinting at cultural continuity rather than extinction. But why leave such impressive structures behind? The answer might lie in their spiritual worldview. For the ancestral Pueblones, places weren't just locations, they were living entities with cycles of renewal. Abandoning a site could have been a deliberate act of returning it to the earth, a belief echoed in modern Pueblo practices. The most haunting clues are the petroglyphs. Spirals, serpentine patterns, and humanoid figures with hollow eyes pepper canyon walls, some aligned with solstice sunbeams. At Choco Canyon, a sprawling network of roads radiates outward from ceremonial centers, suggesting pilgrimage routes or astronomical alignments. Were these markings left as a farewell, a plea to the cosmos, or a map for future generations? The Anasazi's legacy isn't just a mystery, it's a mirror. Their story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about resilience and collapse, about what happens when a society's ingenuity meets forces beyond its control. In their silent stone cities, we see our own fragility and a reminder that civilizations don't always end with a bang. Sometimes they just walk away, leaving only echoes in the wind. High in the Bolivian Andes, where the air thins and the horizon stretches endlessly, lies one of archaeology's most bewildering open-air puzzles, the Sajama Lines. From ground level, they appear as faint scars on the earth, barely distinguishable from the rocky plains. But from above, these thousands of perfectly straight pathways reveal themselves with startling clarity, crisscrossing the Altiplano in a geometric web that covers an area larger than modern-day Los Angeles. Etched into the dark volcanic rock over centuries, perhaps even millennia, by the indigenous Karangas people, these lines aren't mere footpaths. They're masterworks of precision, some running arrow straight for over 12 miles, cutting across ravines and hills without the slightest deviation. How did a culture without aerial vantage points or modern tools achieve such exactitude? And more importantly, why? Theories abound, each as tantalizing as the next. Some researchers see celestial significance in their alignments. Certain lines point directly to sacred mountains like Sajama, the towering volcano that gives the region its name, while others align with solstice sunrises or the paths of constellations revered by Andean cultures. Imagine standing at the center of these lines during the winter solstice, watching the sun rise precisely over a distant marker, an experience blending astronomy, geography, and spirituality into a single, breathtaking moment. But the lines aren't just solitary tracks. They intersect at nodes called sects, forming a radial pattern eerily similar to the Nazca Line's ceremonial centers, hinting at a shared cultural logic across the Andes. Then there's the pilgrimage hypothesis. For the Karangas, movement wasn't just practical, it was sacred. These pathways might have guided worshippers to shrines or holy springs, their very act of walking imbued with ritual meaning. Modern Aymara communities still trace similar routes during festivals, following ancestral trails to honor Pachamama, the earth goddess. The lines could have functioned as a spiritual highway where every step was a prayer etched into the land. But the most haunting possibility, the lines as messages, not for humans but for deities. In a world where the divine was woven into every mountain and cloud, straight pathways might have served as conduits for communication, their unbroken lines carrying offerings or pleas skyward. Or perhaps they were territorial markers, a way for clans to assert their connection to the land in a language of permanence and order. What makes the Sajama Lines so extraordinary isn't just their scale, but their endurance. Unlike the Nazca Lines, which fade without constant upkeep, These paths have weathered centuries of wind and erosion, their dark stones resisting the elements. They're a testament to a civilization that saw the land not as something to conquer, but as a canvas for meaning. And in their silent, sprawling beauty, they challenge us to reconsider what ancient cultures could achieve, not with technology, but with patience, purpose, and an unshakable bond to the earth beneath their feet. The story begins in the shadows of Jerusalem's streets, moments after the crucifixion. As Jesus stumbles toward Golgotha, a shoemaker, some say his name was Ahasuerus, refuses him mercy, striking the fallen man and mocking his suffering. In response, Christ delivers a chilling curse: "You will wander the earth until I return." From that moment, the legend claims, this man became the wandering Jew, an immortal figure doomed to walk the earth for eternity, appearing in every century with the same weathered face and hollow eyes, a living witness to history's tides. What makes this myth so haunting isn't just its biblical roots, but how it mutated across medieval Europe. By the 13th century, chroniclers from England to Armenia recorded sightings of a ragged traveler who claimed to have been alive since the crucifixion. In one account, he appears at a Spanish monastery, recounting the fall of Rome as if it were yesterday. In another, he's spotted in a Bohemian marketplace, his pockets filled with coins from long-dead empires. These weren't ghost stories, they were treated as historical fact, with bishops and scholars debating the implications of a man who defied death itself. But was there a flesh and blood wanderer behind the tales? Some historians trace the legend to real Jewish diaspora communities, displaced after the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE. Their forced migrations across deserts through foreign cities might have crystallized into folklore, transforming collective trauma into a single, cursed figure. Others see echoes of older myths, like the Greek wanderer Ahasuerus, yes, the same name as the shoemaker, a sailor cursed by the gods for his arrogance. The wandering Jew became a canvas for Europe's anxieties, a scapegoat for plagues and wars, even as he fascinated theologians with questions about divine justice and repentance. By the Renaissance, the figure had shed his purely ominous aura. In German pamphlets, he became a scholar, warning cities of impending disasters. In French plays, a tragic philosopher, weary of life but unable to die. Goethe and Shelley later reimagined him as a romantic antihero, wrestling with the burden of endless time. This evolution reveals something profound. The wandering Jew wasn't just a cautionary tale. He was a mirror reflecting each era's fears about immortality, identity, and the price of witnessing too much history. Perhaps the most poignant twist came in the 20th century, when Jewish writers reclaimed the myth. To them, the wandering Jew wasn't a cursed outcast, but a symbol of resilience, a people who, despite pogroms and persecution, endured across centuries. His endless journey became a metaphor for survival, his immortality not a punishment but a testament to unbroken lineage. So who or what was the wandering Jew? A misunderstood traveler, a collective memory of exile, or something deeper, a story so powerful it transcended its origins, becoming a way for humanity to grapple with its own impermanence? In the end, the legend's true magic lies not in solving the mystery, but in how it keeps wandering through our imaginations, forever just out of reach. For thousands of years, Hindu scriptures have whispered of Dwarka, a city so magnificent, its towers glittered with gold, its streets hummed with divine energy, and its ruler was none other than Lord Krishna himself. According to the Mahabharata, this legendary kingdom met a cataclysmic fate, vanishing beneath the waves in a single night when Krishna departed the earth. For centuries, scholars dismissed Dwarka as pure mythology until marine archaeologists began pulling artifacts from the depths off India's Gujarat coast. What they found wasn't just a sunken settlement, but a sprawling underwater metropolis that rewrites our understanding of ancient maritime power. The ruins lie beneath 60 feet of water in the Gulf of Cambay, their outlines visible through sonar imaging like ghostly blueprints. Massive stone blocks, some weighing hundreds of tons, form geometric foundations stretching over 5 miles. Pottery shards bearing markings similar to those from the Indus Valley civilization dot the site, alongside anchors, jewelry, and even fossilized human remains. Carbon dating places these artifacts around 9,000 years old, older than the pyramids, older than Mesopotamia, suggesting a coastal civilization thriving when much of the world was still in the Stone Age. The scale alone is staggering. This wasn't a village, but a hub of trade, religion, and engineering far beyond what historians believed possible for its time. What makes Dwarka's discovery so electrifying is how closely it mirrors ancient texts. The Mahabharata describes a city built on reclaimed land, protected by towering gates, with a harbor bustling with ships from distant lands. The underwater ruins show precisely that, a series of dock-like structures and flood defenses, evidence of a culture that mastered the sea. Even the timing aligns. Geological studies confirm a massive seismic event around 1500 BC, when rising sea levels swallowed entire coastlines. Could this be the Great Flood described in Hindu texts, preserved not as metaphor but as oral history? But here's where the mystery deepens. If Dwarka was real, who built it? The artifacts suggest a culture bridging the Indus Valley and later Vedic societies, with maritime technology advanced enough to trade across the Indian Ocean. Yet no contemporary records mention such a power. Some theorists propose a lost Harappan port city, its existence erased when the Saraswati River dried up. Others see connections to the mythical Khmer Empire, a Tamil civilization said to have vanished beneath the waves. The most tantalizing clue, a stone slab recovered from the site, engraved with a script that resembles early Sanskrit, still undeciphered, but potentially holding the city's true name. Dwarka forces us to confront a thrilling possibility, that ancient civilizations may have risen and fallen in cycles we've only begun to trace. Its ruins don't just validate myth, they challenge the linear narrative of human progress. Why did such sophistication emerge here, only to be forgotten for millennia? And what other drowned cities might lie undiscovered, their stories waiting beneath the tides? For now, the ocean guards its secrets, but every artifact pulled from the silt whispers that the line between legend and history is far thinner than we ever imagined. From cursed tombs to undeciphered manuscripts, the mystical legacies of forgotten dynasties remind us that history is far stranger than fiction. These aren't just relics gathering dust, they're invitations to question, to wonder, and to rethink what we know about the civilizations that shaped our world. Take the terracotta army of Qin Shi Huang, standing guard for millennia over a tomb too dangerous to open, or the Voinish Manuscript, its pages whispering secrets in a language no one alive can understand. These puzzles aren't locked away in textbooks, they're alive, pulsing with questions that refuse to stay buried. What makes these enigmas so compelling isn't just their age, it's what they reveal about us. Every time we stare at the Nazca lines or puzzle over the Antikythera Mechanism, we're not just studying the past, we're confronting the limits of our own knowledge. These civilizations, whether carving cities into cliffs or charting stars without telescopes, force us to admit how much we've forgotten and how much we still have left to learn. The Baghdad battery alone upends our timeline of human innovation, suggesting that ancient minds might have grasped concepts we consider modern. But beyond the riddles, there's a deeper thread connecting these stories, the universal human drive to leave a mark. The Anasazi didn't just vanish, they etched their existence into canyon walls. The builders of the Plain of Jars stacked stones not for practicality, but for eternity. Even Prester John, a king who likely never existed, shaped real-world exploration because people needed to believe in something grander than their grim reality. These legacies, whether tangible or imagined, prove that history isn't just about facts, it's about the stories we tell to make sense of our place in time. So which mystery grips you? Is it the eerie precision of the Sajama Lines stretching across the Andes like a celestial map, or the green children of Woolpit, their origins lost between folklore and famine? Maybe it's the Wandering Jew, a legend that morphed from cautionary tale to symbol of resilience. Whatever captivates you, remember, these aren't just artifacts or myths. They're bridges spanning centuries, cultures, and even continents, inviting us to step into the unknown and see our own world anew. The past isn't finished speaking. With every unearthed relic and deciphered glyph, we add another piece to the puzzle. So keep questioning, keep exploring, and most of all, keep listening. Because somewhere between the whispers of forgotten tongues and the shadows of abandoned cities, the next great discovery is waiting. Will you be the one to uncover it? Hit subscribe, join the conversation below, and let's keep unraveling history's greatest mysteries together.